Gacha gaming is an industry driven by numbers of players and number of revenue, as is with most other industries because, wow, in other news, water is wet. But I think in particular, gacha games are very subject to the amount of money that they make, and that's partially because of the revenue reports that get published. Every single month, we get a report from a website called Tower Sensor that gives us the list of top 100 gacha games and how much money that they've grossed in revenue over the previous month. And this report does have a pretty big impact. It has an impact because gacha gamers in particular are very careful about where they want to put their money into, because you don't want to be investing money into a game or a platform that's just going to have an end of service in the next month, especially if you're a whale or somebody who's dropping potentially thousands of dollars. That's a big deal. Nobody would want to drop $10,000 into some anime PNGs that now you can't even use those PNGs in the game. Like, you already shouldn't. Like, don't get me wrong. You already shouldn't be dropping $10,000 into anime PNGs into a gacha game. But then if you do, you want to at least still have it and have them in the game. You don't want to have an end of service come in here and just smack you right in the ass before you're ready for it. But that happens, and 2023 in particular has been a year of the dead gacha game where we've had some games drop as fast as 1 month. Editor's note, it was actually announced 2 days after this game released that it would be ending service after a week in operation. That's terrible. It's been a pretty big year for that. And so this report recently was released and I wanted to take a look. And look, there's been a lot of conversations about this. There's been a lot of conversations about the revenue from Honkai Star Rail and about the revenue from Genshin Impact. And there's been a lot of controversy there. A lot of the Genshin stands really getting upset with people even pointing out that Honkai Star Rail made more money than Genshin Impact, which is like not a controversial take, but like they are. I don't know what else you want to be upset about. It's just the reality of it. For those of you who don't know, that's a big deal because Genshin just had a huge update with the release of their new region Fontaine. And so a lot of people were expecting the revenue from Honkai Star Rail to really shift back to Genshin Impact. But we haven't seen that. And a pretty significant amount too. Star Rail pulled in 49 million and Genshin Impact pulled in 32 million. That's crazy. That's a pretty big disparity between them. Look, at the end of the day, Hoyoverse wins. All the money's going to Hoyoverse. But in terms of where the money's coming from, that's a big deal. And Genshin Impact stands aren't happy about that. But that's where we're going to leave that one right now, because if you want to hear me talk about that more, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe we can make another video. But I wanted to look at this report because of the game that we've been primarily covering on this channel, and that would be Punishing Gray Raven. I've always been caught up in kind of like the top 5 slots of this, like, gacha game grossing chart. I've, scrolled down a little bit, but, really always interested in who are the top performers. It's just something you want to keep an eye on. And so I've kind of always glossed over Punishing Gray Raven in the past or PGR in the past. And I was like, oh, I should probably take a look at that. Cause we see the top 5, the usual suspects: Fate Grand Order, Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, Uma Musume, which kind of came to my attention recently, thanks to the anime man who did a video talking about that. And then Nikke. Hey, congrats to Nikke. You made a top 5 slot. We all know why, right? Oh, you don't know? It's because they had a summer event where they released 4 limited characters back to back, who all of them have some very summer special costumes available on the characters, as well as some of the other characters that didn't get summer specific units. They've also got alternative costumes that released along with it. It was a big cash grab. It was a big deal. And it worked. I mean, look at this jump. We went from 15 to 20 million, guys. That is a huge jump in that case. But I thought, okay, let's go ahead. Let's scroll down. Scrolling. Well, where's PGR? PGR's down where? Oh, we found it, and it's, oh, okay, 400,000. Is that bad? It's not. Well, at least I don't think it is. And I'm going to walk you through, and I want to show you why. So Punishing Gray Raven is split between global and the Japanese servers, with not every gacha game doing that. Some of them do, some of them don't. And as we can see here, between the two of them, they're actually pulling in a collective 800,000. So on this list alone, we could actually bump them up a little bit higher to something in the range of Eversoul, because Eversoul does not have it split between multiple servers as well. So actually, it's really still staying up there with some other newer release titles like Aether Gazer. It can also look kind of scary if we're comparing it to, again, the top 5, which are pulling in tens of millions of dollars a month, and Punishing Gray Raven's pulling in collective 800,000. Yeah, by comparison standard, it looks like an absolute failure, but you're comparing it to the wrong thing. What we should be looking at is its monthly trend. So as I mentioned, this tower sensor report is a monthly report, which means we can go back and look at previous months and see what the games were pulling in. So I jumped all the way back to January. Sorry, the report looks a little bit different here, but I went back all the way to January, and we can take a look at the Japanese and global side and see Japanese servers stayed steady at 400,000. And we can see on the global side, 700 to 1.1 million. That was a big deal. During that time, the global server was having their own Near Automata event back in January. So that's why they did have a really big month during that time. Unfortunately, that's when I started playing PGR, right at the end of that, that rerun of that event. So it was really disappointing that I missed it, but that is why they had such a huge month. So then next we can take a look at February. Let's take a look at February. What were we doing at that? February, that's where we're going to see some pretty steep drop off because the event is now over. We're kind of getting back a little more to status quo. The 1.1 on the global side dropped down to 400 and the Japanese server went from 400 to 500. So actually still pretty steady in that regard. Well, then we look at March. We can speed up a little bit here. 500 to 400. Okay. And then we had 400 to 600. Pretty good month overall, but nothing crazy to write home about. And then we can jump to the next month. We can see, well, 600 to 500 and 400 to 500. So, well, still a collective $1 million for the game of that month and still looks pretty good. And then we can do the same for the next month, 500 to 500. And then we can see on the Japanese or on the global side, we can see 500 to 700. So still doing really well. We do see one anomaly here in the month of June, where on the Japanese side, we did see a pretty steep drop from 500 to 200,000, but the global side dropped from 700 to 500,000. Now, I wasn't able to exactly determine why that was having such a significant drop during that time. So if you managed to find other reasons for that, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be interested to see. But then we can see immediately the month after, this is where we go back to that other format. We can see on Punishing Gray Raven, global goes from 500 to 800, and the Japanese goes back from 200 to 400, which then brings us back to August, as I had said before, 800 to 400 and 400 to 400. So when we look at a report kind of crossing from January to now, and we're looking at the trends of spending in the game, it actually stays within a pretty consistent range of that 400 to 500 range. There's some other slight variations and other things that we can kind of explain away as to why there was massive spikes or some dips, but it seems to be fairly steady at the 400 to 500,000 range. That's good. That is a good thing for players and people to know, because most gacha games go through a massive spike when they first release and then immediately drop very low in terms of the revenue, and in many cases hit end of service. Punishing Gray Raven has been around for a couple years now and has still been very steady in its spending and investment, because we also know on the Japanese and global side that we are behind the CN servers in terms of what they're releasing. On the CN side, they are a year ahead in content, and these reports aren't pulling full revenue from that. This is just pulling, I believe, from PC and iOS, where we can see the iPhone and Android spending accumulated totals there. That's how I think these numbers are pulled. So this isn't even complete revenue. This is just from what we can see on the tower sensor report. So overall, there's actually like some pretty consistent health and spending on these titles. So I think looking at that from like a historical perspective and what we're seeing there, I don't think there's any cause for concern when we look at these numbers and look at the trends for Punishing Gray Raven. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. To be honest, I think the big measures for where we want to see if there's some variation is in the coming months. Well, later this month in particular, we're seeing a really sought after character get dropped on the global side. And so I'll be really interested to see what the spending looks like for that and the total on the September report when that does get dropped. That is going to cross a little bit from September into October, but I will be interested to see how that shapes, because that will give us a good indicator of the kind of the health of the community there as well. I think the one thing that Punishing Gray Raven is actually at risk for is Wuthering Waves itself. Wuthering Waves for sure has a direct fan base crossover with Punishing Gray Raven. I think almost everybody who's a Punishing Gray Raven fan wants to try Wuthering Waves because it's the combat that people know and love from Kuro, but in an open world exploration environment. Kind of what people wanted from Genshin, but never got. So I think when we do eventually see Wuthering Waves release, I think we're going to see a pretty steep decline in revenue from the Japanese and global side when it does finally release to everyone on the global side. One of the cool things for Wuthering Waves is they are releasing to everyone, CN, global, Japanese, all at the same time. So I think there's going to be a lot of hype around it, and we are going to see that. But Something else to remember, while PGR's revenue may decline, I think it's just going to migrate to Wuthering Waves. I don't see that like just evaporating. So at the end of the day, the money's still going to be going to Kuro, so isn't necessarily cause for concern of the health of those games and IPs. So, but that's what I think really is kind of the greatest risk to Punishing Grey Raven at this point. I think looking at the reports that we have, I think it's doing just fine, guys. So I'm happy to still be playing this game and investing my time into it. I hope you guys are too. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Just wanted to look over at some of those numbers again. If you're interested in more content like this, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you want to see me talk about other content similar to this or other topics, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to chat more about these things and kind of give some of my takes on them. But that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.